I think already steps have been taken that have been most unfortunate in the election procedure in Vietnam. It's not that I expect that they're going to have the same procedures we have here in the United States. Recognize that is impossible. But we're fighting there. We're dying there. We're now carrying the major burden of the struggle. Our casualties are higher than the South Vietnamese. They've been higher for some period of time. Our casualties are higher in South Vietnam than the Vietnamese draft call. I think the fighting and the dying and the effort should be made by the South Vietnamese and not just by Americans.
What do you think
and
this
when this election
administration
when this election proceeds as it is, it causes me concern. The reason that we're there is to permit the people of South Vietnam to select their own leadership. If that election is not honest while we're making our efforts there, I think it undermines our whole moral position within South Vietnam.
We have spent our talents, our resources, our energy to fight a war in Vietnam, and we have retreated from the task of helping other nations build new societies. No government and no people can foresee all that is to happen, nor can any society escape its share of crises. But too many of the issues that we now confront are the harvests of indifference.
Coal miners and even steel workers.
Making a round. Right here. The press would like another picture, Senator. We're very happy. Honored. You have a seat there. Convention will be in order. At this time, it is my honor and my great pleasure to present to you a distinguished American who is well known for many fine qualities. We all know Senator Robert F. Kennedy as a man of exceptional intelligence. We all know the senator as a man of apparently limitless energy. And I would like to say he shoots the rapids of the Colorado River. He walks 50 miles a day. I believe I can say for our Canadian brothers that you have a warm following up there too. Now, I will not use any more valuable time. United States Senator Robert F. Kennedy, Democrat of New York.
Thank you very much. Al Grosperun, Ben Schaefer, Tony Sabatine, Elwood Swisher, and gentlemen, I'm very pleased to be here. I'm very pleased to join with others in welcoming you to New York. That's what they were saying to me 2.5 years ago. So I'm very pleased to have this opportunity to welcome you to New York now. I'm delighted to hear that you're representatives from 45 states, and there was some reference to the fact that I might have ambitions going beyond being a United States Senator from the state of New York. I want to assure you I do not. I just want to be a good United States Senator from the state of New York. I have no ambitions to be President of the United States, nor does my wife, Ethel Bird. I'm delighted to have so many nice things said about me in the introduction. It's, I think, one of the finest parts of going around to make a speech, because you can listen to the introduction. Sometimes people get up and say, everybody knows Senator Kennedy, so we won't say anything about Senator Kennedy. But I thought it was very nice, and I appreciate it, because this morning, as I was coming over here, I heard somebody tell what he thought was a funny joke about the fact that Senator Robert Kennedy and Senator Edward Kennedy and Sergeant Shriver are out in a boat in the middle of the ocean, and a wave came along and the boat collapsed, and somebody on land said, "Who was saved?" And the reply was, "The country." So I'm delighted, and I very much appreciate. Your union stands for something very special in this country, and all of the effort and the work that you've done, the contributions that you've made, I think are extremely important, and that's why these issues is, it cannot excuse from us the concern that we must have about their implications for the future. For these crises, in part, are the legacy of past indifference to the future that we were shaping. No man who puts his hand to the plow and looks back is fit for the kingdom of God, the scriptures say. And if we put our hand to the urgent task before us, while ignoring what is to come, we sow the seeds of crises for the next generation of Americans. We see today in our own society and around the world the price of neglecting the full consequences of our public policies. We see our cities, for example, with even larger numbers of the poor and the unskilled, who came in search for new jobs and a new life after generations of hopelessness decreed by the color of their skin. We see other Americans living in the security of the white suburbs, insulated by their flight from these pressing financial needs of the new urban citizens. Yet we did not foresee that we were shaping this new American dilemma when we built thousands of miles of highways, providing escape into suburban communities for the middle class. Nor did we see what would happen to the suburbs and to their suburban communities, which were spawned by this flight, that they would be unable to provide adequately for the schools and the water and the coherent land use that this population explosion demanded. Nor did we see, as the use of autos grew, so did the poison in our own air. And the Public Health Service tells us, which is a hazard to the health and welfare of persons exposed over a period of time. There was no great political debate when these highways were built, no moral confrontation as we had over the question of civil rights. Yet these highways shaped the future more than a dozen proclamations of our national purpose. They changed dramatically and drastically the contours of our land and the course of our lives. This is but one illustration of yesterday's failure, developed nations of Europe and Japan. Yet there are children in Mississippi that I have seen who were without enough to sustain a human being. And there are families in Appalachia whose dwellings are mockeries of the word home. And there are students in our teeming ghettos whose schools lack textbooks and teachers. We have rebuilt our cities with gleaming stores and new housing, but we have destroyed the neighborhoods of the poor and imprisoned them in ghettos. We have split the two Americas further and further apart, and feeding the fires of despair, which have today exploded into violence. We saw the promise of shining cities, but we were blind to the new generations of the ill-fed and the ill-housed and the jobless that we were helping to breed. Nor has this narrowness of vision been confined to our conduct at home. We have ventured abroad without fully realizing the twisted paths that our journey would take. We built a foreign policy on the rhetoric of anti-communism and found ourselves imprisoned in that rhetoric when the communist monolith began to crumble. We saw good markets and stable governments abroad, and we did not realize that to the victims of oppression and our support to them was as defenders of tyranny. And today in Vietnam, we spend $3 million every hour. We fight with 500,000 of our men, but we do not seem to know how we came to a war of this breadth, nor the way that we can bring it to an honorable end. Nor did we foresee that while the most powerful nation on earth found itself seemingly trapped in this war, 13,000 miles from home, those who wished us ill would feel free to foment new difficulties for us elsewhere around the globe, with the future not to have learned the cost of that indifference. We know that we must develop new and more rapid means of transportation from our cities to the suburbs, from our jet ports to downtown, if we are to live in any comfort in an increasing urban America. Yet one of the most promising solutions, the Department of Transportation's high-speed ground transportation project, is in jeopardy of losing almost half its funds that it requested for research and experimentation. We know, as the recent riots have reminded us so clearly, that we must quickly find new ways of giving hope to those who live in the ghettos. Yet last year, we gave to the Department of Housing and Urban Development only $500,000 for research and for development. And we have denied them funds for such promising programs as rent supplements and model cities that could help chart new directions for our cities and for urban America. We know we must aid other nations to break the cycle of poverty, yet we can sit content here in our own storehouses, dieting while others starve, buying 8 million new cars a year, while most of the world goes without shoes. What kind of a world will this be to the new generation of Americans who inherit this kind of a globe? What kind of a world will they have where we live in islands of affluence, surrounded by seas and oceans of poverty and despair? What kind of an existence will they have? What kind of a world will they inherit? What kind of a world will we pass on to the next generation of citizens of this country? We, and especially you, whose knowledge of skills most directly mold the world of the year 2000, must keep our vision of the shape of the world that our work is building. We must heed the counsel of Albert Einstein when he said, "Concern for man himself and his fate must always form the chief interest of all of our technical endeavors, in order that the creation of our mind shall be a blessing, not a curse, on mankind." And he went on to say, "Never forget that in the midst of your diagrams and in the midst of your equations." This means at root a new sense of responsibility for all of us, not to any class, not to any company or government, but to the people whose lives will be changed tomorrow by the work that we do today. We and you must ask what a new product or a new factory will do to our environment, whether it is safe as well as profitable to build it, whether what it will destroy is worth more than what it will create. We must not permit the shape of urban America to hinge on the chaotic use of our land and the unforeseen movement of millions, but begin to plan coherently for the land where we build our homes, our factories, and our parks. We must remember that there is no constituency for our rivers and for our forests, nor for the purity of the air that we breathe, nor for those in other lands who look to us for help in building their new lives. We must not be satisfied with a tax system which lets many of our wealthiest escape their share of the burden, while new taxes are proposed which fall most heavily on those wage earners who can least afford it. There are 2,000 people here in the United States.
Stop there. Right there you can stop, Senator. We rolling? Senator, in your speech you spoke about some very rich people in the United States who weren't paying any taxes. How many of them are there and who are they, sir?
Well, there are about there are several thousands of people who have incomes over $500,000 a year, and there are quite a minority, but quite a group of those who pay no taxes at all. It is a fact that after people make $200,000 a year, the percentage of their income that they pay in taxes goes steadily down. The average person over $200,000 a year pays approximately 27% in taxes, and there are some that pay no tax at all, and some who pay very, very little in taxes.
Senator, do you disagree?
There are those who have incomes of over $1 million a year who pay no taxes.
Senator, do you disagree with the President's proposal for a 10% surcharge?
Well, I have some reservations about it. First, I think those who have these high incomes should be paying taxes. I think they should pay their fair share. I think there are also a number of loopholes that still exist in our tax structure, which should be taken care of before the wage earner, the salary earner, is taxed. And I think that this tax does fall with a particularly heavy burden on the low-income people and the middle-income people in the United States who can least afford to pay this increase in taxes. Those who are on salaries between $5,000 and $12,000 or $15,000, this tax is going to be particularly difficult.
Senator, would you comment, please, on Premier Key's letter to the Congress stating that the elections in Vietnam, South Vietnam, were in fact free and honest, and also his invitation to the Congress to send representatives to supervise the elections?
Well, I think, as I said in the Senate last week, I think that government has had to make it clear, must make it clear that we expect far more of the Vietnamese people and the Vietnamese army than we've seen over the period of the last few months. The fighting, for instance, in the DMZ, in which so many Marines have been killed and who are being wounded, I would like to see the South Vietnamese up there protecting their border.
Senator,
Would you accept the
committee of senators and congressmen go over there? And
No, I don't. I think that there are newspapermen, there are television people who can report daily on the election. I don't think there's a necessity for a special committee of Congress. There are experienced observers in Vietnam who have already reported to a great extent on the election and the election procedures, and will continue to report, and I think we can continue to get their reports.
Have you ever considered such a trip, Senator?
Well, I've been to Vietnam in the past. I'm not considering a trip at the moment.
Senator, do you think that Premier Key's letter to Congress implied corruption among American congressmen?
Oh, I don't know. The steps that were taken to rule off the ballot the finance minister and a former head of Vietnam, Big Min, I think were unfortunate. I think the finance minister was praised by United States officials, praised by General Key, was in General Key's cabinet, and to rule him off after he had served with a good deal of distinction, rule him off as a communist, I think was unfortunate. I think to have taken those steps, also to have announced that no matter who wins the election, that a military committee is going to in fact run the country, I think goes a long way to making a fraud of the election. So
Senator, the French press reports today that we bombed within the city of Hanoi and that there are heavy civilian casualties. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I think we continuing to escalate the war. As I've said before, the war is not going to be won in the north. It's going to be won by the people of South Vietnam in the south, and we can help them. But no matter what we do in the north, in my judgment, it's not going to affect the outcome of the struggle in the south. That's where the struggle has to be waged. And it has to be, again, by the Vietnamese people. As President Kennedy said in 1963, this is their war. It has to be won by the people of Vietnam. We can help them, but we can't do more than that. And we're not going to resolve this conflict by the bombing of the targets in the north. As Secretary McNamara has said, the bombing of the north doesn't stop the north from sending in the men and the material that they need in the south. It does not. It makes it more difficult and makes it more costly for them. But still, they're able to supply the South, and we're not going to change that. And I'm distressed at disturbed and very concerned at what has been happening over the period of the last week.
That after the elections in South Vietnam, there will not be any more representative government there than there is now.
Well, I don't think that what I would say is that the people, certainly up to the present time, have not had a free and open choice in selecting their leadership. And I don't think that no matter what happens from now on, that the elections could be described as free and open.
Senator, you said today in Washington that Mr. Paul Kunstler opened up a Kennedy for President 1968 headquarters. What is your comment on that?
Well, I'm not running for president. I've done what I could to dissuade those who have been interested in this cause. I've written people letters, and I've said that I'm not going to enter any of the primaries. Whatever I can do to discourage those who promote my candidacy, I shall do.
Might
Senator
you change
Kennedy.
that feeling, sir?
No.
Senator Kennedy, you propose a reevaluation of our policy in Vietnam if these elections are not fair and honest. Do you feel if this is so, that this might be an out to start withdrawing troops from Vietnam? What would you like to see happen?
Yeah, well, I've described what I would like to see happen. One of the first steps I'd like to see is that the South Vietnamese carry on the struggle themselves, with our help perhaps, but that they carry the major burden and not the United States. We're not only doing the fighting, doing the dying, supporting the government and supporting the economy, but I don't think that we should be associated with an election that is not free and doesn't permit the people of South Vietnam to decide their own destiny. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator.
18 grown men leaning on my shoulder.
Well, it was reasonably good.